안녕하십니까. 매일매일 운동하기를 추천하고 있는 동탄 왕포입니다. 코로나가 안 끝나네요. 비가 많이 오고 야간 전날 운동하겠습니다.
For them to see some of the dangers that these men and women face. I know that when families visited this site, they witnessed one of the personnel tumble 25 feet down the pile of debris. Those are some of the dangers that they're exposing themselves to make sure that they work around the clock. They are working 12-hour shifts. Many of these men and women only take breaks to check their oxygen levels, to check their pulse, to make sure that they're in the physical condition necessary to continue searching. So Aaron, as you take a look at this pile of rubble, we know that so many people around the world know people whose lives perished here or who are hoping that their loved ones come out alive. Aaron?
All right, Rosa, thank you very much. And of course, as you look at that, the devastation, 109 people are inside. I know that they're, hope for a miracle, but, you're looking at, of course, what we know was the gravesite for at least 36 people there on your screen. And as they are desperately, you hear Rosa saying, they're just trying not even to take breaks to try to desperately race against time here. They're also racing against now the storm. Heavy rain, strong winds, and tornadoes are all now threatening the coast because of Elsa, forecast to be a hurricane upon landing in Florida. I want to go now to meteorologist Tom Sater to just get, obviously people are hoping here against hope, Tom. They don't want to lose time in the search, and of course you now have this storm. Tell me about where it may hit and what conditions it may bring.
Well, Aaron, first let's start with the operation there in Surfside. It looks like they're mainly clear, or not clear, but at least dry. The cloud covers with them. They had the worst of it earlier when a good band moved into that, but it's nothing worse than they've been putting up with for 13 days. So good news for them and their operation as far as the weather concerned. Just moments ago, the team in a Hurricane Hunter aircraft have taken off to go investigate once again. By the time they get there, I think it's going to be a little too late for the 8 p.m. advisory to lift Elsa to hurricane status, but it's coming. The last few images here on this loop, you can see how bright and how expanding this area of red and purple is. That means it's getting stronger. So it's going to become most likely a Category 1 hurricane sometime this evening or overnight before landfall up in the Big Bend area. The hurricane warning in place is the first time that the west coast here of Florida has seen a hurricane warning since Hurricane Michael, terrible hurricane 3 years ago in 2018. Last night, they increased the surge up to 5 feet. I'm very concerned now when it comes to Venice, everyone who lives in the inlets up to Tampa Bay, and everyone who lives in Tampa Bay, Tampa, Sarasota, St. Pete. But again, it is getting stronger. Lightning shows that. And as it makes its way toward a landfall at sunrise up in the Big Bend, that's a good place because it's mostly uninhabited. We do have a tornado watch till 11. That'll be extended. But to give you an idea how rare this is, to have a hurricane make landfall in July on the west coast of Florida, the last time was 134 years ago, 1886, before they were even named. So we've got a long night ahead of us. It will be downgraded as it makes its way to the Carolinas, but re-emerge off the coast of Norfolk and become a tropical storm once again.
All right, Tom, thank you very much. The next breaking news of the disturbing new video we are getting just now from January 6th. We're learning about new security concerns tonight also at the U.S. Capitol. Plus, Republicans across the country now campaigning on Trump's election line.
We already know that there is fraud.
Find the ways of Taekwondo within yourself. The mind that honors respect and kindness. The valor that fears no challenges. The perfect balance of body and mind. Discover yourself. The way of finding your infinite potential is the very foundation of Taekwondo. Taekwondo, the great change.
I'm Zain Asha, and this is CNN.
Across Africa, businesses are working together like never before. On CNN, Connecting Africa.
Join me and Lenny Jokas as we crisscross the continent to show you how you can
It is hope that a Ghanaian can dream big and achieve that dream.
Saturday on CNN, in association with Bank. Tech for Health.
Immersive experiences can be used to transform and accelerate our health.
Tech for empowerment.
Rest plan.
Tech for connection.
Being connected to loved ones is part of our health.
This is Tech for Good.
Join me, Christy Lustout, as we explore the technologies that could shape our world for the better.
Tech for Good, Saturday on CNN, in association with Samsung. Connect the world with Becky Anderson.
It all starts here. Changing, fighting, creating, connecting. That's why we're here. We live here, we work here, we're from here, and we'll go wherever the story takes us.
Becky Anderson in Tehran.
We are in Jerusalem. Real news that shapes our world. Exploring not just what's going on, but why.
I just want to appreciate one further point.
Getting perspective on this region from this region. Places that many of us know, but few of us get to see. Observing countries on the move, still rooted in tradition. It all starts here, and that's why we're here, bringing you the world from our Middle Eastern hub.
Connect the world with Becky Anderson, tonight on CNN.
I'm Mindy Kincaid in Atlanta, and this is CNN.
Breaking news, videos just released showing more of the violence and chaos both inside and outside the U.S. Capitol on January 6th, Insurrection Day. This is new video. This is surveillance video from the Justice Department. It shows the rioters actually harassing Capitol police officers who were trying to block the Senate chamber until they were able to force them out of the way, and then of course they broke the doors open and stormed in. Seconds later, rioters are seen taunting one of the officers, showing their fists in a fighting-like stance. See there. The FBI is now releasing nearly a dozen new videos from outside the Capitol as well, because they're still trying to identify rioters who assaulted law enforcement. Here is one of the new clips. These new videos come as we are hearing of growing concerns of more pro-Trump related violence this summer. Multiple Capitol police officers telling CNN that now nowhere near enough is being done to prepare them for any sorts of threats. One officer telling CNN, quote, "We haven't made any changes to prepare for it. Zero. That's what I'm worried about." Up front now, the longtime partner of fallen Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick, Sandra Garza. And Sandra, I appreciate your being back on with me tonight. I'm sorry because today is, it's exactly 6 months, and yet we're now seeing new video showing more taunting, more violence against officers like Brian. You hear that officer's quote to CNN though about how things are now, worried that they've done no preparation and no changes, anything, zero, for another possible violence. How hard is this for you to believe, Sandra?
It's really unbelievable, Erin. I mean, here we are 6 months and the officers feel like nothing has barely changed. It's very disturbing, especially given that, FBI Director Wray came out not that long ago and issued the report about the QAnon conspiracy theorists, that now they feel like they want to go from not just digital soldiers, but actually on the ground soldiers, and are really considered to be a real threat, as well as what he said earlier, that domestic terrorism is truly on the rise. I mean, those things combined, and given that they're looking at the fencing coming down soon, it's a nightmare. It's very terrifying.
And when you talk about that, I mean, morale of the department seems to be extremely low. Union leaders are now saying more than 75 officers, Sandra, have left since January 6th. And I know in my conversations with you, this doesn't surprise you, but for viewers to understand, that's about 3 officers a week if you want to look at it that way. One of them telling CNN, we're losing guys left and right. Young guys don't want to be here. The old guys who are eligible are just rolling out. And I mean, I know, Sandra, you have spent so much time speaking with officers and their families who worked with Officer Sicknick.
Yes.
What are they telling you now about morale and why so many are leaving, how they feel about others leaving?
Well, that's exactly right. Morale is at an all-time low. They're very upset that they don't have a chief. I know for a fact that they have been asking for a specific person. They want Inspector Tom Lloyd as their new chief. I know he put in for it. They like him. I know Brian was a big fan of his. He's a good leader. On January 6th, he was out there side by side with them. He was relieving officers, letting them go and get medical treatment. Actually, the New York Times included him in an article on January 14th saying how he was doing just that. Fighting side by side with the officers and, being a true leader. And, that's not to throw anyone else under the bus. It's just to say, you know what, if they want to improve morale among the officers and not lose any more officers, they need to listen to what they want. And when you have a good leader, and believe me, in this kind of job, that's everything, having a good leader. When you have a good leader, you retain employees, you can actually recruit new employees because people are happier, they feel respected. And, also the congressional members and all the employees in the Capitol are at a safer, level because you have a good leader that can give direction under a lot of pressure and stress. And again, that's not to throw anybody else under the bus. I'm not trying to throw, Chief Sund under the bus. But I think, given everything that Capitol Police has been, through, they still haven't gotten the Congressional Gold Medal of Honor. My gosh, and what Republican members, not all, but what they are doing is absolutely terrible. I was told off the record that the Republican members that are, out parading around with Donald Trump, they're on camera saying, January 6th wasn't a big day, but then behind the scenes, they're buying them pizzas and donuts. It's like, you know what, so they can buy them pizza and donuts, but they don't care if they get murdered. The logic in this is just outrageous. They need to cut this out and, do something. And again, this isn't, of course, I'm out here because I love Brian and I'm doing what's right for Brian and his colleagues, but also we're talking about democracy too, right? And the safety of all the innocents in the building.
Right. And you and I have talked about that. All these people who risked their lives and did that every day, and then, of course, they are dealing with people who are saying it wasn't a big deal, and it's not about Trump and all of those things. And I know you met with many Republicans who have given you that feeling, right, Sandra, in response to why they don't support these medals of honor, which are so crucial and so deserved. To that end, I just want to bring up again the date today, Sandra. It's 6 months to the day. And as I said to you right before we spoke, in front of the national audience, I said, I know every day is hard, but an anniversary is an anniversary. You think about that. Today there was a statement from the Capitol Police Department. I just want to read a part of it about Brian. They said, "We will never forget USCP officers Brian Sicknick and Howie Liebengood, who died after the attack, nor the sacrifices of the nearly 150 law enforcement officers who were injured. We honor all the brave men and women who, against all odds, faced down a violent crowd that day and protected our elected leaders from everyone who was in the Capitol complex." And I know, you speak out because, you want people to know what happened. You want the truth to be told. You want the recognition that Brian deserves. To everyone watching tonight, how do you want them to honor the sacrifice of Officer Liebengood as well as Brian?
Yeah, and I would also add Officer Jeffrey Smith and all the officers too, and I know you care so deeply about this, Aaron. I mean, you've invited me back to your show as well, but all the officers who suffered, you know, the officer who lost an eye, officers who suffered concussions, and the unseen injuries, right? I mean, you know, PTSD, all of that. But I really want people to call these Republican members of Congress who refuse to admit what happened that day. They need to be, you know, I hate to use, harassed is not the right word, because I don't want anyone harassing anybody, but they need to call them and say, look, you know, this is wrong what you're doing. This is about justice. This is about the safety of our country. And I think that's what everybody wants who is looking for a healthy outcome. And it would honor their memory appropriately. Them trying to sweep this under the rug is not honoring their memory. And I just want to add to, I'm so appreciative of Representative Liz Cheney and Representative Adam Kinzinger for having the courage to speak out, and all the other brave, you know, couple of handfuls of Republicans who are doing the same and thinking about our country.
Well, Sandra, thank you very much. And I know it is fair and it is right to point that out, but of course, it is, you know, the mass of the Republican Party still who are, you know, where you see people who are denying what happened and its significance. And now you've got Republican candidates embracing Trump's big lie and the rigged election. Is their baseless claim really a winning message? We're going to be talking about that right after this break. Plus, it's become a flashpoint in schools across the country. So no doubt you've heard of CRT. But here's the most important thing. What is critical race theory?
This is the 100 Club, our look at companies that are 100 years old or older. Dannon yogurts are known the world over. The business was fermented in the Spanish city of Barcelona, where Dr. Isaac Carasso began producing yogurt to help combat indigestion among children. In 2017, the company launched a new slogan, One Planet, One Health, and has now committed to making all of its packaging reusable, recyclable, and compostable by 2025. To mark its centenary, Dannon has allowed access to almost 2,000 of its yogurt strains to help scientific research into food and health benefits.
I guess the essence of the story of Danone is entrepreneurship for health.
We're all consumers in this world, so it's important to know where the products you are purchasing were made or came from. My name is Susan Coppage, and I presently practice law in Atlanta, Georgia at the law firm of Crevlin & Horst. Prior to that, I was President Obama's Ambassador at Large for the Office to Monitor and Combat Trafficking in Persons at the U.S. State Department. I believe the next focus for fighting human trafficking will be on what businesses can do to ferret out labor trafficking in their supply chains. We've gotten much better about being aware of the signs of human trafficking, and individuals can look for these when they go to a nail salon or a restaurant. And if they see indicators where people don't feel free to move about or aren't making eye contact or can't communicate without someone standing over them, then they should call law enforcement. It's very important not to be a hero right there in a moment yourself, but to reach out to the appropriate authorities to do that. And I'd like to brag on two hometown companies that do this, which is Delta Airlines, which has trained flight attendants to be aware of the signs of human trafficking, and also UPS, which has trained their drivers. It's also very important to look at what the vulnerabilities are for trafficking survivors, and to go upstream of the problem and try to solve some of these vulnerabilities so that trafficking survivors don't fall prey in the first place.
My name is Sona Jabate, the Gambia's first professional female choir player. I'm currently in London, but one of the ways I make sure I reconnect is by playing my choir and teaching my son. This is the way that we maintain our tradition and culture.
I'm Nirmal Lamed in Aksum, Ethiopia, and this is CNN.
Tonight, campaigning on the big lie, hundreds of Republican candidates, hundreds, you did hear me correctly, that's according to the Washington Post, are running for local, state, and federal office on a platform pushing Donald Trump's false claim that the United States presidential election was stolen. Why are they embracing a lie? Sarah Murray is out front.
For Ren Williams, seizing on the election fraud narrative in his bid for the Virginia House of Delegates was an easy call.
Well, it's pretty hard to forego campaigning as one of Donald Trump's legal attorneys in the 2020 election, you know, when that is the national role that I played.
Williams represented former President Donald Trump in his unsuccessful bid to challenge the election results in Wisconsin.
I have seen enough discrepancies throughout at least Wisconsin that would overturn the Wisconsin election.
There's minimal evidence of election disparities and no sign of widespread fraud. Even so, he used election fraud concerns to win his district GOP primary, beating out the incumbent. Now Williams is calling for more election safeguards.
I push back and I'm telling you there's not one single case of election fraud. And they're like, well, it's not widespread election fraud. Well, how much is enough? Like, how much is too much?
He argues his fraud concerns are a far cry from peddling conspiracies.
I understand your concern. There are issues like what I am saying, and then there are issues like the Kraken.
Voting rights advocates don't see much of a difference.
I think they are all coming from the same place of promoting the big lie and undermining people's faith in the elections. The way they do it might be more palatable, and that might just be the way they've learned to sell themselves, but it really is coming from the same place.
Across the country, Republican candidates are campaigning on the baseless claim that fraud was a rampant problem in the 2020 election. Some are still falsely claiming Donald Trump was robbed of victory.
I'm not at all surprised that it has become a campaign platform.
Christina Caramo is campaigning for Secretary of State in Michigan after claiming Trump won the state, which he actually lost by more than 154,000 votes.
Donald Trump won Michigan.
While post-election audits, a Republican-controlled Senate committee, and even Trump's former Attorney General Bill Barr found no evidence of widespread fraud in Michigan, Caramo is still calling for more audits in the style of the widely panned Maricopa County, Arizona review.
People mocking the audit are really ignorant. No, common sense tells you if someone is doing something effectively, you learn from them, then when you can replicate the process yourself.
In Arizona, there's Secretary of State candidate and current state representative Mark Fincham.
We already know that there is fraud.
He's taken his fraud claims to at least one podcaster supportive of QAnon, as well as to Washington, where he was spotted outside the U.S. Capitol during the January 6th insurrection. Though he says,
you'll notice that I never came anywhere near the entry point for the Capitol.
Fincham still touts his belief that the Arizona audit could somehow upend Biden's victory in the state.
What I would be in favor of is reclaiming our electors. If you have enough states that pull those back, and you get below 270, we now have an illegitimate president.
But seizing on unfounded claims of election fraud as a campaign talking point has its drawbacks, as Ren Williams is discovering.
Now I have this huge issue show up that basically people aren't willing to trust the system, and I'm like, look, we need you to vote.
Now, Williams is in a pretty conservative district in Virginia. He is well positioned to win his race. It's unclear what's going to happen with Fincham and Caramo. We submitted questions to them, tried to get them to cooperate with this piece. They did not want to answer questions, Aaron.
All right, Sarah, thank you very much. I want to go straight to Scott Jennings. He's the former senior advisor to Mitch McConnell and former special assistant to President George W. Bush. So, Scott, you've got hundreds of Republicans who are, obviously believe that they can win by echoing Trump's false claim that the election was stolen. I mean, it's pretty stunning. You're in Michigan, state that he lost by more than 154,000 votes, and the message is he won. Here's the question to you, just from the political perspective here, the strategy perspective. Is that really a winning message? Is it going to work?
Well, it's certainly effective in Republican primaries right now, where candidates are trying to outdo each other on who's more loyal to Donald Trump. So buying into that message helps you achieve that goal, where I think it becomes more problematic if you're not running in a really red area in a general election. If you're running in a purple area, it's going to be a problematic message. I don't know that it will be enough, frankly, Aaron, to derail Republican chances to win back the House in the 22 midterm. But I think as we get into 2024, if the Republican Party intends to make the centerpiece of its platform relitigating the 2020 election, there's virtually no chance we'll win back the White House. So if Donald Trump's our party's nominee, of course, that's exactly what he'll want to do. If he's not the nominee, that person eventually, I think, is going to have to say out loud into a camera, Joe Biden's a legitimate president, and now let me explain to you why you should vote for me.
It's amazing to think that someone would have to say such a thing, but I mean, yet this is the world that we actually live in, our reality here, Scott. The question for you, though, is you talk about it might work in these elections now. Then, of course, those sound bites are there. They live. You can't take it back. Does that matter, right? You're on the record saying it was stolen, and then in 2 years you want people to kind of forget you said that?
I think it greatly depends on your jurisdiction. If you live in an area where Donald Trump did quite well, I doubt it's going to be very hurtful. But if you live in a purple area or a blue area and you're trying to win a seat that's held by a Democrat, or you've got to talk to a bunch of swing voters, if you happen to live in one of those kinds of jurisdictions, like a lot of the Senate races will be in 22, yeah, it's going to be very problematic. And as I said, I think even in 24, Republicans are going to have to make the case to the American people of why they should entrust us again with the most awesome power in the land, the presidency of the United States. And if we go into that election relitigating 2020 with a lie, I don't know that they're going to entrust us with that power again.
All right, Scott, thanks. Always appreciate you.
Thank you.
And next, teaching about race and racism, leading to parents clashing with teachers and school officials. So what exactly is critical race theory? Okay, ready, let's go. Dubai. Oh, it's so cool.
Forget a picture is worth 1,000 words. For Amrita Sethi, a word is worth 1,000 pictures. She uses a technique she calls voice note art.
It's me capturing a sound or word. So I say the word Dubai, Dubai, and then each of the lines of the sound wave I draw to match the meaning of the word. 2020.
Her big idea is to digitize her voice note artwork and sell them as NFTs on the blockchain.
With NFTs, what's going to be happening is you're going to go into a much more immersive experience encompassed in such beautiful creativity that it's just going to blow all of our minds.
My mother taught me a very important lesson. Never stop chasing your dreams. And my passion is boxing. My dream is to become world champion, achieving something that only few could accomplish. I will fight hard in Belgrade to become stronger than yesterday.
Business is all about making connections. But some connections are easier to make than others. With a CNN partner hotel, the world is always at your fingertips. CNN partner hotels, connected to your world.
I'm Sandoval in Bogota, Colombia, and this is CNN.
truth is not radical or wrong. That was the message today from the president of one of the largest teachers' unions in the United States, who are fighting back as Republican leaders in several states try to restrict how teachers teach racism in the classroom. Haley Reeve is out front.
There are thousands of parents all over the U.S. of all races who have been speaking out against CRT, and rightfully so. These are my babies, not yours. If you are embarrassed or ashamed of your skin color, that's your issue, not mine nor my children.
This is a school board meeting in a suburb of Philadelphia, where a small group of very vocal parents are speaking out against critical race theory, or CRT.
We do not want our children to be taught that America is systemically racist.
600,000 people died in the Civil War to end racism and slavery. Don't rewrite factual history or indoctrinate, just present the facts.
In the wake of protests of the murder of George Floyd, Republican politicians have been hyping critical race theory as a threat to the impressionable minds of America's children.
Critical race theory says every white person is a racist. Critical race theory says America is fundamentally racist and irredeemably racist.
In more than 12 states, legislators have proposed bills to ban CRT. We wanted to meet the actual people working with actual kids in actual schools. So we talked to Keziah Ridgway, who teaches high school African American history and discusses CRT in her anthropology class.
Can I just start with a very simple, what is critical race theory?
Yes. Critical race theory is not being taught in schools. It is a theory, it is a lens by which to view history and the way that law and race kind of overlaps and connects in society. Can it influence the way that some teachers teach? Yeah, but that's a good thing, right? Because race and racism is literally the building blocks of this country. So how can you not talk about it?
Critical race theory is an academic framework that says racial inequality is perpetuated by the racism embedded in America's laws, not by individual bigotry. But relentless propaganda from some conservatives has created a panic that white people, and especially white children, are under attack.
Critical race theory is basically teaching people to hate our country.
Schools are embracing this ideology and forcing white students and white teachers to be ashamed of their own skin color.
It's not critical race theory, it's racism.
These are systemic things. Ignoring it perpetuates the problem. By acknowledging it, we can find solutions and we can address the problems and the inequality that exists in our country. And so I think teaching it this way actually does the opposite of what these people say it does.
Are you teaching children to hate America?
No, I'm teaching children to question America. And that's what makes a good patriot.
Don't force on our kids a particular worldview. Taking a white brush and painting this country as structurally racist, it's insane.
Why is it insane though? I mean,
because it's a lie.
Last year, Alana Fishbein says she received an email from her kid's school that students would be learning more about the role of race in American society. She thought the materials were racist, so she pulled her kids out of public school. Then she created an advocacy group, No Left Turn in Education, to draw attention to her claims that CRT is poisoning young minds.
This isn't just in history. In the 90s, the crime bill gave much more severe sentencing to crack cocaine versus powder cocaine simply because black people were perceived as doing crack cocaine and white people.
Ask Joe Biden why he did that.
That's a great question. But this Joe Biden, I think, is a perfect illustration, right? Joe Biden would present himself as a nice guy who would never have a racist bone in his body, yet he participated in creating these laws that have a structural effect of affecting black people more than white people.
But we don't have them now.
People affected by that law are still alive.
We're talking about something entirely different now. This is my taxpayers' money. I don't want it to go to indoctrinate kids that then are going to hate my kids because of the color of their skin and attack them because of the color of the skin. What happened in the summer, it twisted the minds of all kids. My kids can be attacked by Antifa kids or BLM kids that are not black. They are white like my kids. But they are believing, they were indoctrinated. And they internalized this philosophy.
Were your children beat up by Antifa kids?
I beg your pardon?
Were your children beat up by Antifa kids?
I'm talking, it's gonna happen if we're not going to stop it. But we are going to stop it. We are the great majority of this country.
Anti-CRT propaganda is drawing big crowds.
Of course I'm against critical race theory.
More than 100 people showed up at this diner near Baltimore, where local Republican groups held a panel on school COVID shutdowns and CRT.
What is critical race theory?
Critical race theory is the idea that's taught to our nation's youth that the way that you're born contributes to the amount of success that you can achieve in this country. It basically states that white people are born with everything, and if you're not white, you're born with nothing.
Can you name any critical race theory scholars?
Probably not.
Can you name any critical race theory concepts?
I don't know what the concepts are. I think I summarized critical race theory as a whole pretty well.
To paint the country as a inherently racist country from its founding, I think is dangerous.
The Three-Fifths Compromise is written into the Constitution, in which slaves are counted as three-fifths of a...
Of course, and that was applied at an earlier time. That is not the case now, obviously.
Well, you just mentioned the founding of the country, so...
Well, yeah, it wasn't perfectly written in the Constitution.
When did you first hear about critical race theory?
Sometime around last year.
Where'd you see it?
I'm on Fox News. The idea that you can succeed based on your race is ludicrous. This is not the 1960s anymore. Just because of your skin color does not mean that you cannot be successful here in America. Point blank, period.
I teach these books for my anthropology class.
Are you teaching white kids to hate themselves for being white?
No.
Are you teaching black kids that there's nothing they can do to improve their situation?
Absolutely
because
not.
There's racism and they can never fight it, so they should give up?
Absolutely not. I'm creating little free thinkers and future politicians and lawyers and teachers and change makers. Our kids are smart. They know what's happening. And I think we do them a disservice by continuing to pretend like critical race theory is the issue when it's really you just don't want kids to learn the truth. Because not only do they become critical thinkers, they also become voters. And that is what's scaring a lot of these people, because they know that as this generation gets older, a lot of these people that are making these laws will be voted out of office.
So Ellie, I know you spoke to parents and activists in Philadelphia for your story, but you've done so much reporting on this. How widespread is it? Yeah, we're seeing conflicts over CRT pop up across the country. For example, our crew just dropped by one meeting just to see if someone might show up and talk about it, and 2 people did. And while this conflict and panic is based on misinformation, the fear these people feel is real. We saw a woman cry real tears at the thought that her child was being taught to be ashamed for being white. Wow, it's incredible, but reports like yours make such a difference. And Ellie, thank you so much. Thank you. And thanks very much to all of you for joining us. AC360 starts now.
Good evening. We begin with breaking news tonight, and word just moments ago that the storm named Elsa is now a hurricane. With that, I want to go straight to CNN meteorologist Tom Sater. Tom, what's the latest on this storm?
Well, Anderson, within the last hour, hurricane aircraft have taken off to investigate Elsa. Now, it hasn't even arrived there, it's just arriving now. So even without their valuable information and their data, the National Hurricane Center went ahead and increased this value of Elsa from tropical storm to a Category 1 hurricane based on the information coming from the radar out of Tampa. And we agree. We knew it's going to happen at some time this evening, and it will make landfall most likely as a Category 1. More on that in a minute. We've got a lot of activity still down the south. That's going to follow suit. So our rain amounts are going to increase. We're going to see 5 to 10, maybe isolated 15 now. The very first hurricane warning issued today for the West Coast since Hurricane Michael 3 years ago in 2018. And for good reason. We're looking at landfall right around sunrise up in the Big Bend. The last time we had a July hurricane for the west coast of Florida was 134 years ago. That's how rare it is in July. It was 1886. When you look at the storm surge, big concerns now, because now that we have a Category 1, everything from this parallel northward is under the gun as far as a surge of at least 3, 4, even 5 feet. When you look at the radar, we've got a lot of lightning around the core, so that's another indication that things have really been firing up and that core is intensifying. Now the crews at Surfside are pretty much in the clear. They may have another passing shower or two overnight tonight, but their rough weather was earlier today when a feeder band moved in, so good news for them. Now concerns are from around areas of Venice up toward Tampa Bay. Notice the tornado watch. That's in effect until 11 o'clock, and most likely they'll increase that and take it further to the north as this tracks further to north. Now watch. Here we are, current time period. Heavy band still moving into Marco Island. At 3 a.m., it's almost directly west from Tampa Bay. The surge will really start to increase about an hour and a half before that and continue at this area. But once it moves a little north, let's say 4 o'clock into 5 o'clock, the winds wrapping back around are going to continue to pull that water into into areas of Tampa Bay. So Clearwater is going to have its closest impact with this. Very big concerns with the strong wind gusts. In Key West, we had gusts up to 70 miles per hour or stronger. So that's enough for damage. Once it makes its way, again, through areas of South Georgia and the Carolinas, it'll be downgraded to a depression. And then by Friday morning, it's back off the coast again as a tropical storm. So again, we still have the risk of loss of life and property. Do not take this, just joking matter here, because it was a tropical storm. You're not going to tell the difference between the intensity of a strong tropical storm or hurricane category 1. Again, very rare in July. First one here. There's going to be many because the season really is taking off with quite a punch. Nothing that we really wanted to see just yet, but that's where we are.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Tom. Thanks. We're going to have a live report from Florida a bit later in the program. We begin, though, with the insurrection. 6 months to the day. That's how long since we witnessed the worst attack on our democracy by Americans since the Civil War. Now think about that for a moment as you look at new video released just today from the Justice Department showing a mob of Trump supporters attacking officers guarding the Senate chamber. 6 months to the day. Prosecutors say the defendant in the red MAGA hat climbed scaffolding around the Capitol to get in the building while carrying a baton. This was one of a string of videos released today. His case, one of more than 500 now being prosecuted. Here's another clip. We're just going to let this one run raw so you're reminded of the chaos and the violence of that day, which is important because some lawmakers, as you know, they want you to believe that what you're seeing didn't really happen.
Oh, no.
6 months the day. 6 months since the Sicknick family lost their son, Brian. 6 months since more than 140 officers were beaten, pepper sprayed, choked, tasered, maimed in what was an attempt to overturn the election. Now, you would think it would also have been a wake-up call, just like the 9/11 attacks were 20 years ago this September. Can you imagine anyone of any consequence back then trying to downplay what happened? Or say we should just put it all behind us? Or worse yet, actually argue on the culprit's behalf, as the former president did this weekend.
Who shot Ashley Babbitt? It's got to be released. And how come so many people are still in jail over January 6th?
Ashley Babbitt is the woman who was shot dead as she tried to break into the speaker's lobby as lawmakers were being escorted to safety. Today, 6 months later to the day, Republican Congressman Paul Gosar put out a statement echoing the former president's call for the officer who shot her to be named. That officer, by the way, has already been cleared of criminal wrongdoing. He's also been receiving death threats, according to his attorneys. Now, trying to expose him for doing his job is how Congressman Gosar is marking this day. And 6 months today, other people who stood up to the former president and his lies have also gotten death threats. Not only that, also the family of one person who stood up for the truth got them as well. Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger's wife, Tricia, telling Reuters she received a series of threatening texts as recently as April. "You and your family will be killed very slowly," one of those read. Another warned of a, quote, unfortunate accident the family would have. Still, another read, quote, "We plan for the death of you and your family every day." Now, don't forget that 6 months later to the day, the handful of Republican lawmakers who stood up for the truth have basically been cast aside by their party. Congresswoman Liz Cheney stood up for the truth and was stripped of her leadership position. And 6 months to the day, it's the lie that won't die. Reporting today in the Washington Post, quote, "Of the nearly 700 Republicans who filed initial paperwork with the Federal Election Commission to run next year for either the U.S. Senate or the House of Representatives, at least a third have embraced Trump's false claims about his defeat." Late this evening, President Biden weighed in with a statement reading in part, "Not even during the Civil War did insurrectionists breach our capital, the citadel of our democracy. But 6 months ago today, insurrectionists did." The president went on to call it a sad reminder that there is nothing guaranteed about our democracy. Joining us, a Republican lawmaker who does not believe in the big lie, Congressman Adam Kinzinger of Illinois. Congressman, thanks for being with us. Do you think your Republican colleagues even watch those videos? I mean, or try to stay up to speed on various investigations?
No, I don't think so. I think they purposely avoid it. I mean, I think the vast majority, if not all of them, my colleagues believe that this was a Trump-incited insurrection. But when you're in a tribe and, if you say something truthful that gets you kicked out of the tribe, you keep your head down and you stay in the tribe. I don't think they believe it. But if you watch the videos, you get that tinge of guilt. And it's much easier to just paper over that tinge of guilt, hope that this organically just kind of fixes the glitch, and nobody's willing to step up. It's disappointing, of course. It's sad. And I think what's even more sad, Anderson, is not that, so many people that aren't acknowledging the truth. It's that there are millions of people, base voters, Republican voters, many in my district, that believe the big lie. And it's not really their fault, although everybody's responsible for what you believe and doing research. But all the leaders they trust are sitting here telling them it's a big lie. And everything that they see on CNN or everything they read in the paper is a lie. And it's just a cover-up. That's what I think the biggest tragedy is, not to mention what it's doing to our republic.
We are so polarized now as a nation in terms of the information we're willing to believe or accept, or the facts we're willing to see. I mean, if those videos were police on the Capitol being attacked by Muslims or Black Lives Matter protesters, the very people who deny what actually happened would be arguing the exact opposite thing. They would be outraged. They would be using this, and they would be talking about this every day and wanting to launch investigations. It's just sad that we're in this time when, because of the people call themselves patriots who attacked police, who attacked the Capitol, this is what we're now dealing with.
Well, that's the other thing is, what are they doing to the term patriot? I mean, to be called a patriot used to be a great thing. Now, I feel like it puts you in the league with insurrectionists. And you know darn well that if this was BLM, or if this was actually Antifa, or if this was Muslims that did this, if the equivalent of Ashley Babbitt had been shot, because, by the way, when she breached that door, she put every lawmaker that was present at risk. And frankly, if she hadn't been shot, as sad as it is that she was misled to that point, had she not, you easily could have seen more people breach and more deaths. And I tell you, I guarantee you, Paul Gosar would be the one defending the action of that officer, instead of calling that officer, who in my mind is a hero, a murderer. And this is why I think it's so important for us just to have conversation again. And it's going to take, my friends on the left being willing to reach out and not constantly pointing and saying, you didn't do enough then, you did, and restoring that conversation. It's why I started Country First, which is country1st.com, by the way, to just say, learn to talk to each other again, because we're not going to be able to yell our way out of this. And we need to take those that are lying to the American people, and we need to make sure they never win an election again.
What is it like being one of the only people in your party willing to actually speak out about what happened on January 6th, stand up to the big lie publicly? I mean, you alluded previously to the threat your stance may pose to your career. I know you'll say that's not really, what concerns you, that things are more important than that. But, I mean, does it frustrate you at all that, this could get you voted out of Congress?
Look, it makes me sad because I know this is true, and all my colleagues know this is true. It's confusing because I thought so many of the people I know, like Kevin McCarthy, had a red line that they just wouldn't cross, that there would be no payoff worth crossing that line. It feels isolating, but I'm going to tell you, seriously, it actually is very peaceful, because I know I can say what's true. I know that even if I'm standing alone with Liz Cheney and a few others like those that voted with me to impeach, and some of the senators, I know that history will judge it correctly, and I know that it's a very important thing. There's never been a moment in Congress, Anderson, no matter any vote I've taken, any speech I've given, that has ever to me been more cut and dry and clear and more of a demanding desire and need even to stand alone to tell that truth. Because I really believe, and I'm not being emotional or dramatic, I believe that the future of this country and the republic rests on telling people the truth. And until we accept that, there is real damage done to not just America, but America's reputation with these Putin-type tactics that are happening.
I want to ask you about Afghanistan. We talked about this the last time you were on. Not only do you serve there in the Air Force, you're also currently serving the Air National Guard as Lieutenant Colonel. I know you said you disagree with President Biden on his decision to withdraw U.S. forces. The decision obviously has been made. Are you surprised I assume you're not surprised at what's happening there. The Taliban is obviously capturing new territory. We're seeing, Afghan troops giving up in some places, and obviously a lot of Afghan, forces, soldiers, police have been killed fighting the Taliban. But